they'll go to school. But in the meantime, it's things that they could be doing which are important, not only because it does make money, but it's a real income for the people. It's not artificial, and it does. You know, some lady who has made a doll that will end up, say, in the National Art Gallery, or who's made a tapestry that's hanging in the National Art Gallery. Well, there's something in it for her. There's something in it for the people. You know, the fact that old lady doesn't speak English, well, who cares? Where's she going to hear the English anyhow? This is a real problem in the North. These government do-good programs. Another real problem is liquor and gambling. Liquor is it's becoming a major problem. Home brew is sort of going out because the real brew is coming in. The drinking seems to be connected with community living. Like in Pavungnituk and Inuit, where most of the better carving is done and the greatest amount of carving is done, every summer everybody goes back on the land. They can afford to go back on the land. They have good canoes, they have good motors, they have good tents. So everybody moves out on the land. Nobody ever takes a drink on the land. Nobody. I've never heard of one Eskimo when he's on the land who has had a drink. Immediately they come back into the community, everybody gets drunk. It's, you know, why? When they get drunk, everything is broken up, you know, including marriages and girlfriends. Everybody is sorry, they go back on the land, they're happy again. It's, I don't know, maybe it's just something that they can't overcome. Maybe they feel too enclosed, or some of them have taken liquor out on the land. It just sits. They don't even bother about it. They don't even touch it. They'll bring it out on the land. They'll bring it back in the community. 10 minutes after in the community, everyone's drunk again. This is, you know, somebody's going to figure this out one of these days. I haven't figured it out yet. Gambling is another real problem. The people are fantastic gamblers, probably because gambling was something that they, you know, I guess all life in the old days was a gamble. And this is what gave people their kicks, maybe. A hunter goes out, he doesn't know whether he's going to come back, he doesn't know whether he's going to have a seal. If he comes back with a seal, well, that's great, you know, he's a real good guy. If he doesn't, well, it's sayonara, it can't be helped. Maybe the gambling stems from this, but you'll see a guy go into the pool room or sit down with a deck of cards, and it's nothing to lose $400 a night, or $1,000 if he has it. Nothing, absolutely nobody thinks about it. And, well, we think of it as an underdeveloped economy. I think if somebody can lose $1,000 and think nothing of it, well, it's not quite underdeveloped. Incidentally, the people see all the sculpture in the South and they wonder, you know, how much can an artist make? Well, some of the Eskimo artists are making over $25,000 a year, and that's not one or two, that's quite a few. A community like Sugla, which is, it's not a rich community. The average family income is over $12,000. Most of it is from hunting, carving, fishing, so on. The other big lack the other big problems in the north is really the lack of investment capital. A lot more could be done, and things could go a lot faster if there was more access to money. I think that it's not only an Eskimo problem, it's a straight economic problem. It exists just as much in the south. Another problem is lack of communication. The Eskimo feels happy when he knows what's going on. He feels secure when he knows what's going on. A recent development in Pavangnituk is really paying off in this line. A small radio station has been opened, which is owned by the people and run by the people. And this radio station is doing more to change the intellectual activity of the Eskimo than anything else. Right now in Pavangnituk, everybody knows what their neighbor thinks on any subject. It doesn't matter whether it's drinking, or whether it's sleeping with your neighbor, or whether it's the land transactions that Charlie Watt's working on. You know, you name it, everybody knows what everybody thinks about it in POB. It's the only community in the north where this exists. And this is probably why one of the problems, it's probably why Charlie Watt's having some problem now on this situation, is because the people are thinking about it. This is required everywhere as far as we're concerned. And it should be supplemented by a better communication, inter-community communication. There's been a lot of talk about television. Well, they had a discussion on television in Pavangnituk. And when I say a discussion, I mean a radio discussion where everybody picks up their phone and says what they think. And the people don't want television. They say, well, you know, if we had television, who the hell would look at it? We're too busy listening to the radio and talking in the radio. You know, there's no need for television there. As long as people are able to talk, as long as they're able to communicate, who cares about television? The only time that they're not interested in the radio in Pavangnituk is when Elijah Menrick comes on with the news from the south, or news from other places in the Northwest Territories and so on. This is a type of communication that they want, and probably they want it just because they know they need it. The cooperatives are now setting up a radio network in the north for inter-community communications, and if this can be supplemented then by a radio station in each community, you know, there'd be no problem there. Or if there is a problem, they'll solve it because they'll have the means to solve it. At one time, you go into any Eskimo camp, you ask anybody, a kid, anybody, what's happening, and he'll tell you. You know, if you want to know where somebody is, they'll say, oh, he left for so and such and such a place 3 weeks ago, and we expect him back in such and such a time. Everybody knew what was going on in the community. That's the type of life they lived. That's the type of life they're at home with. When they moved into larger communities, this communications, you know, word from one person to another, it just wasn't enough. People were not kept informed, and up until now, with this small radio station in Pavangnituk, up until now, nothing has filled the old need. Now that it's filled, you know, the people are happy. I'll give you, I've just been talking fairly generally. What has this led to? I mentioned earlier that the co-ops are involved in retailing. In 1967 or 1966-67, the fiscal year of CoOps, they did $400,000 sales the first year. The second year, they did $574,000. The third year, they did $607,000. The fourth year, they did $935,000. The fifth year, $1,156,000. The next year, $1,524,000. The next year, $1,726,000. Year before last, then they did $2,184,000, and last year they did $2,728,000. This is with very little input of capital, except what they can generate out of their own business. To go from less than $500,000 to over $2.5 million in 8 years, that's a pretty good record. I think that very few businesses in the South have this type of growth. And there here in the South, you're supposed to have people who are well trained, who are economists, who really know what it's all about. There you have a bunch of damn good hunters and good carvers, but to be able to do something like this, I think that it indicates that, you know, there is definite hope. In tourism is something that's very slow to get going. First year there was one camp, they did $10,000, and the next year they did $10,000. The following year they did $15,000. In 1970 they did $23,000. 71 they did $58,000. 72 they dropped down to $47,000. 73 they went up to $88,000. Last year they did $148,000, and this year, no, the year before last, $148,000. Last year they did $285,000. That's, again, a fairly impressive record. In the production of soapstone and crafts and so on, sculpture is mainly produced in Pavongnituk and Inuit. These are the two larger production centers. Sugluk, Wakem Bay, Ibuivik, and Great Well River, they do some. Pain Bay is just starting. George River, they do a small amount of carving with mainly in Carowandra. In printmaking, they're now involved in Pavongnituk, and a few years ago Inuit started, then Great Whale started, George River started last year, Ibuivik just beginning to get involved. I think it's interesting what can be done. We have a collection of prints coming out probably in May. They're all done by one Eskimo, TV Ito. TV, he always drew a little bit. I asked him, you know, how he started, and he said, oh, you know, when he was young, he used to follow his father around, and when they'd go inland looking for caribou, every time they came to a lake, you know, he'd draw little designs in the sand and so on, and you know, all this romantic stuff, and it sounds pretty good. But, you know, you listen to the guy, then you see what he does. This guy is an absolute genius. He went to Pavongnituk. We had a training course in Pavongnituk. The training course was supposed to last for 2 months. He went there. After a week of working there, he got homesick and he wanted to go home. So he went home. But in 1 week, he picked up enough of the technique to be able to produce a set of prints. These prints will, you know, he had no other contact with any printers or anything else since then. That was 2 years ago. He went home and he just worked on his own. I don't think he's ever been paid for doing any of this work. Now he's produced this set of prints. Many of the printmakers in the South say that they can't figure out how he did it, how he could get the tones that he did with just using stone and ink. He figured all this out by himself. Artistically, they're supposed to be some of the best prints ever produced. They'll sell for up to $350 a piece. He's produced maybe $70,000 or $80,000 worth in a couple of years with 1 week's training. You know, not everybody is going to be this good, but this guy just happens to be that good. He's not unique. There's another one in Nouveau-Québec. Unfortunately, he says he can only print when he's drunk. Well, when you look at these prints, you can understand this. They're quite artistic, but nobody really understands what it's all about except him. This has caused a little bit of problem in the community, but some of his prints are really worth a lot of money. We're wondering now whether we should send him in a bottle a week or something to keep up the production, but this would really get the community all messed up. So right now he's making his own brew so that he can carve, so that he can make these prints. We've also been involved in production of Batik in Nouveau-Québec. We started training in 1967. This is a Eastern art. We just had somebody go in who knew how to do Batik, and they started experimenting around, and a few of the Eskimo people got interested in it, so they wanted to try it, so we sent in the materials and so on. Some of the batiks that were produced sold for close to $1,000 a piece. Crafts were involved in parka making, clothing. Then we've got a line of little toys, the Ukvik and all the rest of these things. Furs. We have been involved in the purchase of furs, seal, so on. This has been mainly the domain of the Hudsons Bay company up until last year. We were doing maybe $20,000, $30,000, but last year we did a couple of $100,000 in fur. The sales of products produced by Eskimos, it went in 1968 from 96,000, then 69 it went to 255,000. 1970 it went to 460,000, 71 it went to 750,000, 72 up to 925,000, 73 it went to 1,045,000, 74 1,833,000, no 1,533,000, and last year it went to 1,617,000. This is meant as income to the people for these products. Income has risen from, well, in 1970, the CoOps paid out to producers $437,000. Last year it paid out $1,800,000. We're talking about 4,000 people here. You know, when we talk about communities, we're talking about, you know, some of the communities with 200 people, the largest community, Nouveau-Québec, having about 600 people. The investment that the people are making in their own development, in stores, in buildings and equipment, has risen. 1967, 68 started. When we started, there was about 50,000, and now they have close to $800,000 worth invested in equipment and so on. The Federation has made a lot of this possible because it's given the people a chance to discuss and understand. What time am I supposed to stop?
No, that's a break.
Hmm?
We don't take a break. We don't take a break.
you want a break?
No.
And then we go on till about, usually in the class by 9 o'clock instead of break, and they end at 5:30.
Okay. I hope you're saving up a few questions, because I'm talking fast and I hope I'll run out of stuff very soon. A lot of the development has been possible, I think, because the people have been able to talk, discuss problems, be made aware of some business techniques, how money can make more money. You know, when we started, and there's still a little bit of this, Eskimo people have said, well, we've been poor so long that we like to see money. And they were poor. I remember when I first went into Nouveau-Québec, you know, nobody had clothing. The people were so poor that we were writing to some of the old farmers in Quebec trying to get discarded clothing so that the people would have something to wear. And don't think that the farmer in Quebec had it easy. When we got clothing from the farmer, they were well used, but they were 100% better than what the people had. They were living in small snow houses. They had practically no food, and not only no food, the food was on the land, but the people were just too weak and too discouraged to even try to go and get it. They were really poor. To a point now, if you send in a pair of gray socks, you can't sell them because just the color gray reminds them of some of the old stuff that we sent in from the farmers, the old homespun that had holes in it that kept them alive. They won't buy anything gray now because it's just too painful even to remember. They like to hang on to money now. If the co-op can manage to get $15,000 or $20,000 in the bank, they like to let it sit. Well, we have to try to tell them or try to convince them that, you know, that doesn't mean you're rich. You're much better to have that $15,000 out working. You know, put it in carvings where we can sell the carvings. We'll make you another $7,000 on it. Then we'll buy merchandise for you, and then you sell that and you'll make another $3,000. You know, in 2 months, that $15,000 you can turn it into 30, very easily if you let it go. But no, you know, it's the old idea. We've got that $15,000. We were poor. We're going to hang on to it. As long as we got it, we're rich. But this attitude, trying to overcome this attitude, is very, very difficult. When you have $15,000 sitting in 10 bank accounts, that's $150,000. And $150,000 today is costing you $1,500 almost a month or a year to borrow, or a month to borrow. But they would prefer to see it sit than to have it without working. They're beginning to come out of this, but it's just one example of some of the problems that you have to overcome in order to get this kind of development. They would prefer to see money sitting than investing it in a building. Many of the people who come in and say, oh, we've got share capital, our share capital is up to $66,000. I want to see it. You know, show me this $66,000. Well, you have to tell them, well, I can't show it to you. It's all around you, you know, it's in your stock, it's in your, well, you know, what the hell's coming off? You people are stealing our money or something, you know, it's, you tell us we got $66,000 and now you tell us we haven't got it. Some of the people are beginning to understand the whole process of business, but particularly the older people, not the real old people, the real old timer If you tell him he's got $66,000, he'll laugh at you because he knows there's not that much money in the world anyhow. If you tell him, well, you know, you're running this co-op, that's fine. Sure, I'm running the co-op. I always run my own country. But you get back to about the 30-year-old level, somebody who has a little bit of knowledge. They're the tough ones to work with, the really tough ones to work with. The younger ones then, they have a bit more knowledge of the world, a bit more knowledge of finances and so on. So these people can understand and they can try to explain. But there is a hard core in there of the 30, 35, 40-year-olds. They're the real tough ones to work with. The Federation, when we set up, we needed some help. We got some help. We got some help from the Quebec government. As a matter of fact, the first year's budget, this was money that was put aside to go to the people who were being paid by the federal government and the Quebec government that were working in the stores and in the co-ops in the north. The Eskimos said, well, you're spending that money now on white people, why don't you spend it on Eskimos? To run the Federation the first year, it cost us $114,000. We got 100% of it from government. The operating budget of the Federation has gone up now to, I think last year it cost the Eskimos $530,000. None of it has come from government. For the past 2 years, nothing has come from government or from anywhere except their own businesses. The way they finance their federation, they say, well, we're doing so much sales in our stores. They grant to the Federation a certain percentage. Last year it was 4.75% of their total sales. On the sale of carvings and prints and things like this, they give us 22.5%. You know, it's they always have to have the 0.5% and the 0.25% in there because it's they take our budget, we present them with a budget, and we got no money to pay for it, the Federation itself. So they sit down, they figure out now, if we take so much money from this operation, so much money from this operation on a certain percentage, since we've already, in the co-ops, they work out their budgets for the coming year, they know approximately what each co-op is going to make, and they take a certain percentage off the top of each operation, and they grant all this to the Federation. And this way they pay for everything. Just a directors meeting, when you're dealing in the north, things become expensive. The directors meeting, which we will be having next week, it'll cost us $20,000. There are 13 directors, but their families have to live while they're down here because most of them are hunters or carvers. So the families have to be fed, the transportation, they have to be put in a hotel or something down here. They'll stay until they're finished, whatever that means. It could be 1 week, could be 2 weeks. We estimate between 2 and 3 weeks. After that, then there's another meeting in the north, a general meeting. This will cost another $25,000 to $30,000. So just in order to have 2 meetings a year, it can cost us $50,000. We have a training program where we bring people into the south, their whole family. We don't believe that the whole family should stay here for a year. Besides, they wouldn't agree to it. So every summer the whole family goes back and they live on the land for all the summer, and then they come back in the fall. But to be carting around, some cases fairly large families, the fact that they're back north for 6 months still means that we have to rent an apartment for a year. But it's paid off in that right now we have people trained that we can send him anywhere. You know, if a manager gets sick in a store or in one of the communities, well, within 10 minutes we can have a replacement on the way for him. Somebody who's employed by the Federation, and this is his job. He'll go and replace anybody. We want to present a course in administration or in finance. We use an Eskimo to do this now because for the past 5 years we've been training him in this. He's been learning both practically and taking home courses and sitting with a professor or something for 3 weeks and getting all the information he can. We've got the whole accounting system in the Eskimo language. Many of the managers don't speak English. We've got one manager. Last year, his cooperative did over $2 million business. He doesn't speak a word of English. He's never been to school. He can operate like hell on that adding machine, but he can't add. He wouldn't know how to even start to divide or multiply. But you ask him to figure out cost ratios or markups on, and he can do it a lot faster than I can. It's, you know, we work with what we've got. He can hit those buttons as well as anybody else, even though he doesn't understand the principle of mathematics. He's still doing a lot of mathematical problems that many of the people here couldn't figure out. He doesn't know why he gets to that answer, but that's always the right answer because he's done it. He's been taught how to do it. all this output of money in the training. We've had about 16 people who have been involved in the training program. They've been selected in the north by the Eskimo and Indian people themselves. These people, they're all involved in one way or another with the economic development in the north. Some of them are gone now to the Inuit Association. If somebody gets $1,000, he spends $1,000. One of the things we're doing to try to, well, I'm wrong there. If he gets $1,000, he spent $1,500 because it means buying a skidoo, and he'll get $500 on debt. We've started a system now in one of the co-ops. It's just an experiment. We're putting in credit cards, and real credit cards, not debt cards. If somebody wants to leave money in their account, like if they pay off everything they owe and they want to leave $100, for every $100 he has in his account, we'll give him a discount of 0.5%. Up to no, for every 200 it's 0.5%, up to $1,000. And if he has $1,000 sitting in his account, everything he buys at the co-op, he gets 5% off. We're just going to try this for a year. We think we'll go up to 10%. This way, he's going to start saving money, but leaving it in his cooperative so that the co-op can use it. But it makes everything cheaper for him. So now it's many of the people are starting to leave money, not so much because they wanted it cheaper, but it's a prestige thing now. You know, if somebody has one of these little cards, and we've got them different colors, you know, and the best one is the green one. If you can get a green card, boy, that means that you've got money somewhere, and it means you're a real good man, you know, or a good woman. So now everybody is looking for one of these green cards. But this will mean that the co-op will begin to have more money to work with. The markup on merchandise will go down a bit. But then, if somebody has, pricing of merchandise in the north, the Hudsons Bay Company and the co-ops are fairly close. Some things where the co-op is a little bit more than the Hudson Bay, some things the Hudson Bay is a little more than the co-op. But they figure that if somebody's going to get 5% on everything, once he gets $1,000 in his account, he's going to get 5%. Well, he's not going to buy anything at the Bay then. So this means that the same staff, the same overhead, business should go up. This is one of the things we're doing to try to get them to save. But normally, no, they spend money as fast as they get it. If they have money today, it's most likely gone tomorrow because it's either spent or they played pool or something like this. Or their wife was unlucky last night.
Could it be that everything is more expensive than here?
I beg your pardon?
Could it be that everything is more expensive there?
Well, food is more expensive. Food is about 25% higher in northern Quebec than it is here. Clothing is the same. It's pretty well the same.
Therefore, we can say that an average of $12,000 is not much.
Well, no, because country food is less expensive than it is here. And about 50% of all the food eaten in the north is country food. So even though the other 50% is maybe 25% higher than it is here, the 50% is a lot lower than it is here. For instance, like we would sell caribou meat. We sell caribou meat for 85 cents a pound. Well, 85 cents a pound for meat, that's a good price. Fish, we sell some places, it's about $2 a fish, huh? This big. Down here that would cost you 10. And this is the basic food is country food. So he doesn't spend as much money on food, or he doesn't spend as high a percentage of his income on food as we would. Yes?
Why do you feel that the Eskimos have to save their money for the investment?
Because it's good business.
What is good business? What I guess I'm going to say is before they were told they were poor, the Eskimos consider themselves poor.
Yes. When people are starving to death, they don't have to be told they're poor. And the Eskimo has lived with a history of starvation. And it's been with him. The one thing he feared most was starvation.
How come the culture has lasted so long?
Well, they're tough. They have really, they've had to work, huh? They've had to be really smart. And they've had to be really determined in order to survive. Well, heck, our history will tell us what happens when you get a bunch of real experts in the north. The only reason why they're famous is because they died in the Arctic. The Eskimo, he's not famous, but he lived in the Arctic.
Don't you think some of this is doing some of the good quality things and what is considered a good man is like green or blue or yellow card, isn't that disrupt some of the...
Well, no. It's not, there has to be a prestige system, I think in any society. I remember when I was in Frobisher Bay, in the teenagers, they had a prestige setup whereby if a young guy could go to the Hudsons Bay Company and he could buy a transistor radio, you know, something around $250, $300. And I've seen them do this. They get a crowd of people around them and then they smash it to pieces. They just break it to pieces. Not even used, you know, brand new piece of high-class equipment. And everyone say, you know, God, what a great guy he is, you know, real great man to be able to do something like that. I'd prefer to see somebody with a green card. You know, they're looking for prestige. At one time with the Hudsons Bay Company, I was working with the Hudsons Bay Company for 10 years. I'm an old fur trader. The prestige was who could get the most debt. The guy who had the most debt was the biggest man. You know, if in the fall, if you'd advance somebody $75, you know, boy, gee, he must be a great guy, you know, and everybody would be saying, how much debt did you get? How much did you get, you know? I got $75. Oh, my God, you know, you must be a real great hunter and all this. There has to be something that people measure other people by. Hmm? Well, why not? You know?
The thing is, I think it is money. I think what Peter's saying, that if the green card business isn't there, then people spend it in other ways. Either there are tremendously nouveau riche Eskimos in the north who have unbelievable amounts of equipment in one room, or there are people who play play gamble every night. So it's a choice between these factors.
And
It's
also
one or the other.
the Eskimo, he has to exist in Canada. Maybe he doesn't have to exist in Quebec. Maybe he can separate and form his own state, or he can do whatever he likes, but he's going to exist somewhere in Canada. This is for sure. He's going to have to coexist with the Canadians. He's going to have to be part of Canada. And right now, whether we like it or not, economics is important. And if he can be as economically wise as the white man, if he can show the same type of progress, if he can gain more and more control over his own economic life, well, that I think is desirable. Right now, people are a little leery about the Eskimos in northern Quebec. You know, you handle them very carefully because they have some power. I don't think that the same power exists in the Northwest Territories. And, you know, if we can have the guy get prestige, which he's looking for, and at the same time, if in order to do this, it permits him to progress economically, I think we're on the right track. I'd rather that than for a prestige system where, and it exists now, you know, a guy brags about the fact that he lost $1,000. You know, he thinks that this is great because he could afford to lose $1,000 in a pool game. The guy who won the $1,000, he brags too, so everybody's bragging. But you know, people are looking for new identities. Right now in the north, it's some people are above all others. You know, you have the Jobies. He's a great songwriter. He's a good singer. You know, and he makes up songs in Eskimo and he sings them all over the place. It doesn't matter whether this guy has a cent. He's a great guy. You know, he's like the movie actor in the South. So you have the parallels developing in the North. And I think it's necessary you have the parallels to developing along in economic lines. I don't think maybe I answered your question the way you wanted it, or... maybe not the best way.
It just is difficult for me to see it in those terms somehow. I guess it doesn't seem like it's a new identity to me. It seems like it's a perpetuation of something that was brought in by, the white man,
It's true.
corrupted, and it's
It
just
is.
a continuation of the same thing, only longer and longer.
It's something added. There's still the prestige to the hunter, and the prestige to the woman who can sew, but there are new things being added. Yes.
I was wondering if pressure is put on the individuals in these small communities to join these co-ops, or could they still operate a private business on their own?
Oh yeah, sure. Like there are a number of Eskimos who wanted to sort of get out of the co-op framework and try something on their own. Like the co-ops in most communities are the distributors for Shell oil. Well, these guys just come, sit down, discuss it with the directors, and they just turn it over to them. I don't think that the idea in the north is to hang on to anything. As long as it's Eskimo, it's okay. As long as it's of the people, it's okay. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Eskimo. Like last week there was a chap in Puvunglitup. He's married to an Eskimo girl, but he was elected to the council. I don't think that there's this racism involved in it, but he is considered one of the communities. He's part of the community. So the fact that he happens to be a French Canadian, this doesn't bother them at all. He speaks their language quite fluently. He can communicate with them. They can communicate with him. They accept him as part of the community, no problem. As long as something is going to stay within the community, as long as it's not some white guy who's going to come into the north, live there for a few years, run a business, and then leave and be replaced by another white guy, they don't care what form the business takes. On the tourist camps, a number of the tourist camps they're owned by the cooperative because none of the individuals have the financial backing to be able to set up a tourist camp on their own. But there's a 10-year contract with an individual Eskimo, and he runs the camp, the same as a private business. The profit up to $5,000. If there's a $5,000 profit, 90% of it goes to the operator. If there's a $20,000 profit, well then the co-op is starting to get more of the money than the operator. But in the low, when profits are low, most of it goes to the operator. When they get very high, well then a lot of it goes to the co-op. And it's done this way, first of all, to keep the southern tourist camp operator from coming in and setting up a camp in the area. And secondly, like if this person tries it for a few years and decides he doesn't like it, well, if he's a private individual, who's going to buy it from him? Most likely it will be a white man, or he'll get into debt and somebody will take it because he can't pay his bills. If it's the co-op finances it. If the individual wants to run it again later on, 10 years from now, he'll have the opportunity to do so. But the main thing is to keep the business owned by the people who are in the community. There are a number of, there's one tourist camp which was started and owned by an Eskimo in George River. He gets all kinds of help from the co-op, from all the people. Nobody is against the individual. And I think that probably in 10 or 15 years, the co-op will probably just be a financing organization in the community, and all the stores and production centers, they'll all be run by individuals. if that's the way it wants to go, well, let it go that way. That seems to be the direction it's going to take. But no one will worry about this, as long as it's the people and as long as the people are benefiting. Yes?
Is your association of cooperatives affiliated in any way, or is it an offshoot in any way, or is it supported in any way by the Quebec, Northern Quebec Inuit Association?
No, nothing,
No relationship.
no relationship whatsoever.
You happen to have mentioned before something about Mr. Charlie Watt of
Mhm.
that organization. He does make tours of sorts in the north for other reasons than the land negotiations.
Well, the Inuit Association is, it's the same as any other association, like the Indian associations. They have various programs that they're trying to set up.
Nothing associated with the cooperative.
No, no, we're economic, he's political. There's,
And your area extends, it does not include the Frobisher area?
no, it's,
Brown has its own cooperative?
cooperatives are provincially or controlled, so we can only operate in the province of Quebec.
This increase in austerity, must have been an increase in the birth rate?
Yes. I don't know whether the birth rate itself has gone up, but the population is going up because there's a much better health service now than there used to be. I remember when I was in Pavongnituk, I suppose 20 years ago, during one winter, there were 10 babies born during the first winter I was there. At the end of the second winter, only one was still alive. And that was normal for babies born during the winter. Babies born during the spring had a better chance. During the summer, not as good. The spring babies were the best crop, you know. They lived, because during the earlier months, they had a better chance because the weather was better. Right now, if you get 10 babies born, most likely 9 or all 10 will be alive next year.
You're introducing people who have been traditionally involved in the tribal economy into a Canadian market economy. Now, that demands a certain versatility. Is there any attempt to communicate a projection of the needs of that larger economy? I mean, how many Eskimo carving can the market absorb before the fashion dies? So you're going into Batik. Just how far can you project sales for Batik into a market economy before it too becomes outmoded? What is the versatility factor? What can you project would be some of the dominant features of this cooperative community now that it is dependent upon its new style of livelihood upon the Canadian market economy? What types of projects do you envisage being introduced into this area? Perhaps auto plant parts, or what?
It's a very good question. I wish I had a very good answer. First though, art never really goes out of style, huh? I think that...
Surely it always goes out of style. Surely it's always going out of style.
No, I think that, you know, a good piece of art never decreases in value. It always increases in value.
Yes, but we're talking about something that can be equated with diamonds, which as long as they're passing through the distributors from one person to another, like an Eskimo sculpture that I was reading about has passed through 10 hands now and has its volume has increased 300 times.
Mhm.
The original carver certainly didn't get anything near that finished price, and an awful lot of people in the south have made a lot of profit.
Yeah, but if that original carver is still alive, he's getting a heck of a lot more for his carving now because that passed through 10 hands and increased in value. This is why, right now, many of the carvers can make $25,000 a year. 10 years ago, they couldn't make $5,000 a year. But it's because it has been considered an art and handled as an art. I remember 20 years ago people saying, oh, this thing is going to die, we give it another 3 years. There's still a great demand for it. I think that the Eskimo will stop carving before the demand is gone. I think that maybe if we have a recession, there will be a lower demand for a while. But it will come back the same as everything else will come back. But I'm still not answering your question. What happens after? Well, I don't know what happens after. It depends. Where is wealth? Wealth is in land, really. If the Eskimo has any land, he'll be able to survive.
But you were just saying that he wasn't able to survive. That's why you were so successful, and that's why you...
Yeah, because he was isolated. And I think that this is, you take Newfoundland. I was born in Newfoundland. And we were isolated for a long time, and we barely made it, We became part of Canada, or according to Newfoundlanders, we took over Canada. And since then, we become part of a bigger thing. And we can participate in it. For a long time, the Eskimo was isolated. And he was, to a great extent, exploited. He had a small amount of things that the white man wanted, fur mainly, and he was paid little for it. Now he has become part of the Canadian society. He no longer has to go to the Hudsons Bay Company manager and, like they did to me, and put his fur on the counter, and if I happen to be in a good mood and like the guy, I could give him $5. I could give him $2. I could give him $20. It was up to me, more or less. To some extent, it was up to the tariffs that we got from the Hudsons Bay Company, what we could pay. But now he's part of this. He doesn't have to go to anybody. He goes to his co-op. Sure, there are people in the co-op who are paid to evaluate his fur or his carvings. But then, if this carving, if the purchasing manager says, "Oh, this carving is worth $30," this will come to the Federation. We reevaluate the thing and we say, "Well, hell, we can sell that for $500. The guy was way underpaid." So we send him back a check up to the point where he should have been paid. There's a certain amount that has to go back to the co-op, which is set aside. But what he should have been paid is what he gets paid, and that's entirely dependent upon what it can be sold for, and it's exactly the same with his fur. Everything, there is a certain markup which the co-op puts on it to cover its expenses and for future investment. Everything else goes back to the producer. That's because now he's part of a bigger thing. And I think that as long as he can hold his foot there, as long as he can keep in as being a part of this bigger thing, he's going to progress. He's going to be able to participate in what's going on. If he allows himself to be put aside, as many of the Indian people did, they signed treaties and everything else, and they're put on reserves, and they're put aside. Well, maybe there's not much hope for him. But as long as he has control in his own country, I think there's a real good future for the Eskimo.
I think that
I'm getting political now.
I'm really surprised at the overtone of your delivery. It has a certain superiority about it, as though you've approached the people incapable of supporting themselves, and look what you've managed to do, and look how...
No, it's, I like this kind of talk.
You didn't hear the first part. You didn't hear the first hour of the lecture.
I just hear all these other remarks, these other statements, as you've been delivering your answers, your rebuttals. I got quite a bit of original.
Now, where was the question? That we're sounding superior? No, I don't think so, because you know what I know, since I spent practically all my life in the north, what I know I've been taught by Eskimos. My attitudes I've learned from them. So if I sound a little nationalistic maybe, it's because when you talk to the older people, they are quite nationalistic. And I don't think that if I spoke this way to you, if I speak this way to them, they say, well, what the hell are you talking about? Hell, we told you that years ago. When it comes to the people feel that their strength is in the land and in their land. And that's where they get their strength, that's where they always got their strength, that's where they got their life, and that's where they're always going to get their life. And I think that when we think of what's happening with Canada, the United States, and so on, we think that way too, huh? You know, as long as we have control of our own resources, we're going to get ahead. But if somebody else takes control of us, well, then we're not going to get ahead.
All right, just rephrase that, because I suspect what the question here is, it's something more like this. The Eskimos managed to survive for so many years, not so much more subsistence level, but really. And you suggested that they, given the choice, they prefer to leave that life. That was
But that's...
I'll just finish. But now we've brought them in a new situation where at the present time they're independent because they have products that they can sell themselves. It gives them a certain amount of power, which is suggested ultimately political power too, which is important. And I get the feeling here that, well, that's all well and good, and that makes them independent, particularly independent. Now, agriculture as well, but what happens if they lose this particular advantage that they have with respect to the rest of the North American economy? Then they'll have lost their old virtues and their old skills and their old abilities, and then they'll have nothing. And I think that seems to me to be the question.
The thing is that it's not that we are bringing or we have caused anything. The situation occurred where the white man started to come into the Eskimo country. You know, why this happened, it's just the way things happen. If the Eskimo sort of says, well, we'll let him do what he wants, and we'll live in our old way, well, it's an impossible situation. It couldn't occur. And even 25, 30 years ago, the Eskimo society had been very much changed. Even the fact that the Hudsons Bay Company, for instance, wanting fur. This changed the whole way of life of the Eskimo. At one time, everybody lived together. The man and his family moved from one place to another all the time. Once you start trapping, you can't do that. You have to settle down. You have to stay in one place while you're tending your traps. This whole the old Eskimo way of life started to change many years ago, and I think that up until the time when the Eskimos said, as they have said in northern Quebec now, let's try to get some control of this ourselves. They went downhill to a point where, as I was saying, in Pavangituck, the people were poor, very poor. And it wasn't only Pavangituck. In many places, the people were very poor. But now,
many years, but they have not been growing in numbers. They have been subsisting. But there has always
Is
been a high.
this a sin against creation or something?
I think it's more on that, the emphasis that it's
I
not
don't
just
know,
us
I don't
going in,
know.
and like going in and saying that we have all the answers here, you know, adopt our ways and we'll be rich. I think it's more, it should be more, and I think it did, you know, you may have said this earlier, it should be more of a two-way street. We have something to learn from them in terms of how they ran their economy before, how they regard the land, how they survived where we could never have.
right, I think that they have something that they can contribute to us, but we have something that we can contribute to their society. I don't think that economics belongs to the white man. You know, there's been economics for a long time, trade, and most civilization appears to have grown out of economic development. You know, the fact that they are beginning to use economics in their life, where they had a very simpler form of economics in the past, it doesn't mean that they're less Eskimo. I think that they do things that are much more Eskimo now than they were in a position to do 20 years ago. You know, where you have one Eskimo group helping out another Eskimo group which is 600 miles away. You know, that's being very Eskimo. At one time it was one guy could help out his neighbor because they were both in the same camp. Right now they're able to help out other groups. We expect they'll be able to help out groups even in the Northwest Territories if the people want the help. You know, this is not being white or being anything. I think that this is just being human.
I was wondering, to go back to the original question about the market being exhausted in itself, do you also have any plans for going into, say, European market for these products? Because there is an interest in Europe.
Yes. Yeah, well, we sell all over the world now. We don't sell nearly as much in Europe. And in the past year, the American market has fallen off because of the present financial problems that they're having. But there is a lot of interest from West Germany, for instance, and Switzerland. And Australia is quite interested. And we are shipping to these countries. I think that in certain types of merchandise, in the finer pieces, the market is hardly touched. So we would prefer that these go to the Canadian market. And we take care of the Canadian market first. It helps bring in the tourist dollar to Canada. And you know, we've discussed this with the Eskimos, and they say, well, we're Canadians, the Canadians help us, the Canadian government helps us, so we help Canada, we're part of it. And they very purposely tell us that we have to take care of the American or the Canadian market before we go anywhere else. This is maybe it's not pure Eskimo thinking. I think that it's Eskimo philosophy, but before anyone can think, they have to have a certain input, and we do put a certain input into it. We try to explain about the world situation and so on. This is why a director's meeting can take up to a month. I don't think that the market right now shows the market is any weaker than it was 10 years ago. It's a hell of a lot stronger. The demand is a lot higher. Maybe it won't go on forever, but I think that if it doesn't go on forever, it will be because we are either unable to afford it, or the artists will stop being Eskimos and will start thinking more the way the white man does, or start becoming too involved in the white man's educational system. Because we have noticed that many of the younger people who have spent time in the educational system in the South, they are no longer carvers. Whereas people who have gone to school in the North, or who have not gone to school at all, are very good carvers.
You mentioned the problem with Indian art. Are you found to converge in
Yes, yeah, we had a big push on for Indian art, and we lost a lot of money on it, a heck of a lot of money on it. And the Eskimos are still very interested in trying to promote the Indian works, and we have a lot of programs going on in the two Indian communities that we're working in. But it's a lot more difficult to do anything with Indian work than it is to do with Eskimo work. Yes.
You mentioned before something to the effect that the true wealth of the country and the people lies in the land. Now, would that mean that in order to exploit the wealth to the greatest extent, they would have to sell the land or part with it? Or would that mean only that they would have to have the use of the resources of the land, the oil or minerals, or that sort of thing, or ship them, or farm them, or sell them south?
Maybe you should get Charlie Watt to answer that one.
Because once you,
You know,
sell
it's-
the land, you've lost it, you've lost your whole source for wealth.
You never saw
Hmm? Well, you know, this is more a political decision rather than an economic. And I know that our board of directors have a lot of things to say on this, but
What is the attitude about the wealth in the land and selling it, or getting, or selling the resources, or what?
well, the old people have very little respect of money, probably not enough respect of money. They don't know the real power of money. The only thing that they think is important is their land. That's the only thing that they, because it's their land forever, you know, all the way back. As long as there were Eskimo, that's their land. And they feel that as long as there are Eskimo, that has to be their land. It's the same as the attitude of the older people toward their language. You know, they say, well, Eskimos speak Eskimo. And that's, you know, they feel that it would be nice if some Eskimos could speak French or could speak English, but they first of all have to be Eskimo. And the land is the same for them.
That seemed like, is there any thought of trying to make cooperatives out of the natural resources rather than just selling art?
Well, there are some of the people, the directors, when they, at one of the meetings that we had with government not too long ago, we were, as I say, we were offered a loan there was financing of $2 million offered to the Eskimo people, but not through their federation, through another federation. And one of the government people said, well, $2 million is a lot of money for us to be discussing. And listen, he's a younger Eskimo, but he's very, very Eskimo. He said, well, you know, we talk about 2 million now, but if we had talked about 2,000 8 years ago, we would think, oh, $2,000 is an unheard of amount of money. Now we talk about $2 million. This seems like a lot of money. In 10 years from now, we'll be going looking for some financial or financing for 200 or 300 million to start our own mining operations in the north. You know, it's all relative to where you are. So this is definitely in their thinking that they know that this is coming eventually. You know, they don't think, well, we're at a certain position, and as Eskimos or as Indians, that's as far as we can go. They think that they can go, that anything that anybody else can do, they can do, which is quite true. There's no reason why they can't. Some more questions, or is everybody tired?
Nobody has any questions? Okay, next week, Don Whiteside will be here from Ottawa, who's worked with NIB and with Secretary of State, teaches at Manitou College, is Indian and has a doctor's degree, and he's done a lot of work on Native rights, and he will be speaking on that. The Indian Act, the relationship to the new Indian Act that's being developed among Native organizations, and the whole area of Native rights next week. And I'd really like to thank Peter Murdock very much for coming tonight.
Our elders and around our mother's age, our father's age, we will refer to them as uncle, or look at them in that kind of way. And so one that came with me is Clarence White, and he could stand up, you all could see him. He's good looking. And then there's Chief Joe Phillips from Kakhnawaga, and his wife is sitting over here. She's good looking too. And Peter Phillips and his wife Dorothy. And everybody else I don't know yet. And sitting over here, they're from Kakhnawaga too, is it? Yeah. So everybody see what we got tonight. Tonight I wanted to talk about the earth or the world as people or living entities, what I might call living entities. There are all kind of races, Indian people, white people, black people, or animal, or insects, or any kind of life. The Mohawks' version of how the world started and how the behavior of man is affected by the starting of the world. Because today we see many high statistics with suicide rates amongst all races, especially it's greater amongst the Indian race. You will see alcoholism, very high statistics among all races, but again, it's higher amongst the Indian race than any other group. All these could be looked at and could be analyzed, and a conclusion could be reached if we know from the beginning, as the people traveled and progressed in time or in civilization. And so I'm not going to use too big words, because the story won't be told if I use university language. Because this language that I heard these stories from are from the old people, or what I call grandfathers of many of the Iroquois nations. And my own mother's father know that story quite well, but he used our own language when it was being told. And of course, it's going to have a language barrier. So I hope you will bear with me if I use a very simple language, because this is how it was told that way. And I can't use big adjectives to tell it. It would just camouflage it so much that you wouldn't even understand what it's supposed to be. Now, I know that you're going to probably find it hilarious, and so you may laugh if you want to as I tell this story of our creation, of our beliefs. But however, you should bear it in mind that I believe the story in many ways. I believe that. And my children too, I will teach my children this story because it will be sacred to them. But I do want to share the story so that you might be able to understand where the Indian, at least the Mohawk Indian, stands, and many other Indians in this continent stands, the problems and so forth, how it come about. So if you wish to laugh as I'm going to tell you the story, go right ahead, because I don't mind telling you, when I hear this creation story of your people's Christianity, like Adam and Eve, boy, it makes me laugh too. It's funny. It doesn't seem it's possible, you know. But again, so is my story. It's kind of sounds impossible too. So we will be equal as we tell the story tonight. Yes? Did you? That's all right. And so now we're going to start. And remember, we'll be equality. Even if I'm going to be an Indian, you're going to be a white man or a Frenchman or whatever you are, we're going to be equal, you know, right away. So we understand that. Here's how it goes now. The old people said that at the beginning of time, that there was no earth here on this whole world, physical world as we know it. There was no ground. There was no dirt. It was just water. That's all it was water. And that there was no life or human life here. But that us Indian people, we came from another earth in the sky. Somewhere in the sky, in a galaxy or in an atmosphere. There was another planet there. There was we call it the sky world. That's what we call it, as it's interpreted. And so up there, in that other world, which already is kind of getting far-fetched story. It's kind of hard to believe. But then again, we look at it, according to modern days university scientists, I don't know if it's so unrealistic to think that it might be true. Because now they claim there might be another Earth someplace up there, and so forth. So we will keep that in mind. So my people said that in this other world, in the sky, it was an Earth too, and the people had attained a very high civilization, a very high spiritualization, where they said they could just go like that, and they could make like a tree change to something. That was their power in what you might call ESP or something. I don't know what you want to call it. But they had great power, higher development. And this is the way it was there. In that place, there was a tree in that land. And that tree, it had every kind of flowers on there. It had every kind of fruit imaginable on the tree. There was that one tree they called the tree of life. That is why today, modern day Mohawk people or Onondagas or Senecas or Iroquois nations, you see when they make their clothes, make their skirt, right on the bottom they make a tree, slanted. It's got things on there. That represents the tree of life of the upper world. Before there was a world here. So this goes back, way back to the beginning of time. So this tree, it was told that the people must not never go to that tree, but the people should protect that tree all the time because it was a very powerful tree. I might example or illustrate it in a way like we'll say, this was all solid uranium. And if you come next to that, something's going to happen to you. maybe are going to affect your childbirth or something, you know, that radium. That's what I'll example that tree as something like a powerful, like uranium. And we're not supposed to go to that tree. So now, then this woman, she had become pregnant. She's going to have a baby. And so you know how it is when a woman's going to have baby. I don't know, but I heard my wife talking about it. Every time she's going to have baby, you know, a lot of times she wants something that it's hard to get it, you know. They call it craving. They want something like, you know. My grandma knows that. My mother says the same thing, so I guess it must be true. And so this woman, she became in a craving mood. She wants some tea. And she told her husband, go on over to that tree over there and take the dirt away from the roots and scrape the root. And with the scraping from the root of the tree, I want you to make me some tea. Boy, that would make me feel good. And the husband, he kind of know, you know, you're not supposed to do that. But that woman said, get over there. And I guess that man is kind of scared of that lady. And he went over there. So he started to dig around. Pretty soon, the ground caved in. The ground caved in. It made a hole in there. Right away, the man got scared. He didn't know what to do, and he just discontinued his job. And so finally, the man went back to his wife, and he said, I can't do it, what you want. So the woman, she said, well, I don't believe what you're talking about. So I'll go over there on my own self. She went over there, and she looked. Well, sure enough, you know, there was a hole indeed there, and it had caved in at that point. So that woman, she looked at it real close. Pretty soon, she got on her hands and knees, and she stuck her head right in that hole, and she go like this, and she want to see everything, what's there. And what she seen was just a plain blue, you know, just a space. And far down, she could see, looks like a blue again. Don't know what it is, you know. And so she's looking around. She wants to see some more. And so finally, she fell down. She fell down that hole. And so as she was falling, she tried to save herself by grabbing on. But instead of grabbing anything that was firm, instead she just grabbed those dirt or the stuff around that tree, which it was seeds, the seeds of the fruits of that tree, all kind of seeds on there. And that's what she had in her hands. And so she come tumbling down into the sky, just tumbling like that. And the only kind of creature that lived in this world here was not people, but it was only water animals, fish, and turtles and beavers and muskrats and otters and all kind of stuff like that is the only thing that lived here. And so there were some wild birds flying in the sky. I think it was, they call it blue heron. Blue herons. I'm not sure if it was blue heron or it's a goose, you know, geese or whatever, you know, big duck goose. They were flying in the sky at that time, and they seen that woman come tumbling down like that. And they said, oh my gosh, you know, what's happening, you know. So those geese quickly had a meeting real fast. And they said, what are we going to do to remedy the problem, to save that woman? And so they said, let us fly together and put our wings together. And that way we can try to take her back up there where she came from. And so they did that. But the woman was too heavy. She fell on their back, and they can't take her back up. She's too heavy. So they said, we have to go down to the water. And so they said, that woman can't swim in the water. She don't know how to live in the water. So one geese said, I will go down before, and I will summon all the creatures of the sea, of the water, and I will explain to them the trouble. And maybe together we could counsel, and we will find a solution. So the one geese or blue heron or whatever kind of big bird it was, they went down, one of them, and he summoned all of them. So finally, the great big turtle come up. You know that big turtle that's in the ocean, that great big one? You can get right on his back. They're so big. He's the one come up. He says, I will come up, and you put the woman on top of my back. And then that way, she don't have to go in the water. And so that's what happened. When they got there, you see that woman is still pregnant, like, and so they got there and they seen in her hands, she had the seeds of all these different kind of plants, all these different kind of fruit and stuff. But there was no place that she could plant it. There was no land, there was nothing. So finally, my people, you see, Indian people, when he tells a story and he views it, he considers the animals just like people. And a lot of time you'll see it in written. They'll say it's bird people, or tree people, or beaver people. So we look at it that way. That's how they tell the story that way. And so finally, all those beavers, they said, we heard it. They had a meeting, the beavers. They said, we used to hear our old grandfathers, they're talking about beaver, you know. They used to say that at the bottom of this water, there is a dirt down there. That's what's needed for that seeds. But nobody never been down there to go get that, to know what it is. But they heard talk about it. So finally the beaver said, I will attempt to go down into the bottom of this water and get some dirt so that lady could plant the seeds. So the big beaver, he dove into the water and he went down. He was gone a long time. And pretty soon, all these other animals, animal creatures of this water, they seen something come bobbing to the top of the water. And here it was the beaver. He had died or drowned, and he didn't make it. And so then the otter tried it. Otter said, I can swim fast, and I'm smaller. Maybe I could do it. And so the otter went down, and he went down for a long time. Pretty soon, the otter came up to the top of the water, and the otter, he was drowned, he died. He didn't make it either. And many other water animals tried it, and nobody could go down that far. Finally, the little one they called the muskrat, he was the last one. He's the smallest one. He said, let me try it. Let me give it a try. And so the little muskrat dove in there, and he was gone longer than the others. Finally, all the animal creatures waiting and waiting. Pretty soon, up to the top of the water come the muskrat. He appeared to be drowned. He appeared to have failed. But they went over there and they grabbed him and they pull him on top of the turtle's back. And there on the turtle's back, they could see that it's still moving here where his heart is. He's not drowned, he's just pretty near drowned. But in his little tiny hands and in between his teeth, he had little pieces of dirt that he found at the bottom of the water. And so everyone rejoiced, and they revived the muskrat. And at that time, the woman who comes from the other world or other planet or whatever it is, she said, she took the dirt and she put the dirt right on the turtle's back, right there. And she put the seeds on there. And this woman, she started to go like this, and she walked around the dirt, just like that. And she started to chant. She started to say words from the other world. And because she has a strong power and a higher civilization from the other planet, with these words and this motion, that little tiny dirt began to grow fast. And that turtle began to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how my people, they tell us the story of how the world started to become. And now after that, the land started to grow. Then the woman, she was to have a baby. So finally she had a baby here on this earth, now this earth. First time that the people came here or was born. It was a little girl baby. And this little girl baby grew up. She grew up to be a young woman. There was no other humans there. And so, as she grew up, she was walking someplace far away from where her mother was, and she was all by herself at that time. But something happened, and she happened to look this way. As she looked that way, she seen it looks like a clouds. And this cloud was in the formation of a man. And this man, she never seen another person or anybody. So she got frightened. So frightened that she just fainted right there on the ground. And so this man, he had 2 arrows with him. 2 arrows. One arrow was a very good arrowhead, and the other one was a very not good arrowhead. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't well made. And these 2 arrowheads, that man who looks like a cloud, he placed it on that girl's body crossways like this. This in 4 directions, to north and south, east and west. That's why we have a sacred 4 directions yet today in our beliefs. And this was the symbol of life, was the 4 direction of this way he placed the arrow on the lady's body. And so after he disappeared, she came to, and the only thing she found was the arrows. That's all. And not too long after that, she started to know that she was pregnant too. It must have been this cloud of a man or figure who left these arrows somehow had made it so that she was going to be pregnant. And so it happened through different dreams and so forth. She knew that she was going to give birth to 2 boys. That's what we call twin boys, 2 boys. Even she was told in the dream what's the name of the children, is what they're going to be. And the name that was given in those of the birth of these 2 boys, number 1 name, we call it Dalunghiawako in our language. It means the one who holds up the sky or the heaven. That's one boy, his name is going to be that. And the other boy's name is going to be Sawiskala. That one is going to be 2 boys, twins. And they will have a lot and a big major role into the development of the world. They will have much powers because they will have been inherited from the other world where our people came from one time. And so it was getting time when the 2 twins were to be born. Yeah. Finally the time came, and the right-handed twin and the other one is left-hand twin. The opposites. Twins are going to be born. The right-handed twin was born in the normal fashion. The one is supposed to be born. And also the left-handed twin, he did not want to be born the same way. Instead, he wanted to come out right here, someplace on his mother. But in the process, it killed his mother. But nevertheless, he was born. And so the mother had died at that time. And so they buried the mother. When they buried the mother in this earth, that's the time they start to call this earth. This is Mother Earth. It's now we call it Mother Earth because they put her under there, the first mother of the creation of the universe. And so then when they had buried her in the ground, as she laid in the ground, where her head was buried in the ground, there grew the 3 sacred food to the Indian. That was corn and beans and squash. We call that yet in our ceremonies. We still do that in honor of those foods and in honor of Mother Earth that goes together with the 3 sisters of bean, corn, and squash. It grew from that woman's head. Where her heart was in the ground, there grew what we call the sacred tobacco that my people use to communicate with the Great Spirit for all the people. And those are the sacred things, one of the most sacred things that we have, that we was given. And that would be the life for the people, the main staple. And so that's how it started. Now after they start to create the land and the mountains and the rivers and create the sun and create the moon and create all these things. First, the right-handed twin, he had a lot of creative powers. So the right-handed twin, they said, my grandfather told me In fact, when I was just 12, 13, 14 years old, I used to be afraid to go towards Messina, New York. It's only about 11, 12 miles west where I live, where I was raised. And there's a rapids over there. There's rapids over there. Used to be worse rapids before they built that dam over there. Used to be very terrible rapids there. And my grandfather used to tell me, don't go over there because Sawiskala is over there. That's the left-hand twin, see. I was 14 years old. I'm still afraid to go towards Cornwall Island, you know. My grandfather's the one cause of that. And so, anyways, now they made the rivers. The first rivers that my grandfather said was made this way, smooth and straight rivers. And if you want it, this river was made this way, just like interstate highway. If you want to go down that way, you can just make a boat or whatever, or get on this side of the river, this side, and the current is going that way. You don't have to paddle hard at all, and the current takes you, you know. You're ready to come home, you just get on the other side of the river, and the current goes that way. That's how the first rivers, my grandfather said, was made. But then, Sawiskala, who is envious and jealous of his brother, he got mad. And so the rivers that were created, Sawiskala, or left-hand twin, he went over there and he kicked them rivers and he hit them rivers like that. And he disturbed the current. Now the current in the life will be easy only one way, but the other way is going to be hard. Now all life from there on is going to be that way. It's easy half, and the other half is going to be really hard. And that's the way Sawiskala did that. Now, then the right-handed twin, he started to make the flowers, all kind of flowers, beautiful flowers. And then left-hand twin got mad. He'd come right behind and he'd make another flower, looks almost like that, nice flower, beautiful too. But that flower that the left-hand twin made, if you made a medicine with it, or use it for to help your health, it would kill you. It would be poison, or it would give you very bad cramps. Whereas the other medicine or flower that the right-hand twin made, it was a good medicine. It will help you be strong. And so you got to watch out when you go in the woods, they say, because of the two creation, the left-hand and right-hand creation of how the world was made. So then right-hand twin made flower roses called rose bush. And at that time, the stem was just smooth as could be. But left-hand twin came along, and he didn't like he's jealous of the right-hand twin. So on that smooth stem of the rose bush, left-hand twin put those needles on there. So if you go to touch it, it's going to be hard too, but it's going to be pretty too. So that's how it was made. Right-hand twin made all the deers. Left-hand twin got mad, and so he made all the wolf to get after the deer. So right-hand twin, he made the sun, and then left-hand twin is responsible for the moon. That was the grandmother moon. And so this is how my people tells me, my old people tells me that the world was made in that way. That how everything was made. And so even the people, how it was made, they made it from this earth or this dirt or this earth from the bottom of the ocean. And those two boys is the one who created all the races at that time. So all the races at one time used to be together. This land, there was no such thing as Asia. There was no such thing as Africa. There was no such thing as North America. At that time, all this world was one. There was only one. Then pretty soon, after a while, these two boys started to grow up bigger. They made the people, everything. They made all the creation. Pretty soon, they called the Great Spirit or God or whatever you want to name, the force of mystery of God or Great Spirit, Creator. The Creator one time, after all this progressiveness are taking place of the earth, then the Creator, He asked the two boys, the two twins, they had lots of creation now. Here's what the Great Spirit said to them. He said, now I will grant you too a wish. You may have a wish. Whatever wish you want, you tell me, and it will become that way. I will grant your wish. So the Great Spirit asked right-handed twin. He says to right-handed twin, what is your wish? And here's what right-hand twin said. Right-hand twin said, he says to Great Spirit, he says, I do not want anything, because everything that I need to make me happy is right here already. If my throat becomes dry and it becomes thirsty, all I have to do is go to the springs, to the river, and I will drink and I will quench my thirst. If I become hungry, all I have to do is pick them berries of all kinds of fruit. All I have to do is stick them roots, wild potatoes, wild onion, everything. It's right there. My hunger will go away. All that was made. He says, so I don't want anything. I will just thank you for what it is so far. So pretty soon, the Great Spirit asked left-handed twin. He said, now, what wish do you want? To the left-hand twin. Left-hand twin, here's what he did. He said, I want you to make something, Great Spirit, between me and my brother. I don't like my brother. He's nosy. He's a troublemaker. He'd do anything to ruin what I want. Therefore, he said, Great Spirit, my wish is to separate us from my brother. Put something between, so my brother doesn't bother me anymore. And so that's the time when the continents, the earth start to split up because of the request of Sawiskalo. That's how we get Africa. That's how we get Europe. That's how we get North America from that point on. And many of the people who were influenced by Sawiskalo was separated from right-hand twin. Thus they were separated. They all had their instructions, every one of them people. But at the same time, every one of them human beings, they had in their makeup two elements, a right hand and a left hand. Everybody, if it's a white, Indian, or black, or Chinese. That means sometimes when there was creation was made, there are two powers in every human being and every animal. The right-hand side and the left-hand side. Just by the sunshine, the daytime is right-hand element. Nighttime is left-hand element. It's easy to get hurt at night. It's easy to fall and stumble. So there must be two powers in this world. And that is where we got the separation of the continents. And the instructions that were supposed to be followed was all told. And all races had it one time, including the white man, including the black man and the Indian. It used to be all nature. One time, the instruction was all nature. Right now, I know you studied this Indian culture and Indian history, Indian way he thinks. You probably all come to that, where the Indian, the traditional Indian, or the Indian that has not been converted to Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or anything or whatever, he always has a nature religion. Is that they just come to that? They just find that in your studies. That is the truth, that way. Not only Indian was that way, but the white man too. Us Indian, we have this earth we call Mother Earth. We got those four winds, we call grandfather winds. The sun, we call it old brother sun. The moon, we call it grandma moon. All these elements of the universe, we are related to them. And they are not us human beings. And so that is why we have finances.
In our longhouse, we have all the same for one, for all elements. That's very fast. All the time. The other races, only for the race that, for instance, English language, Monday. And what does it mean? Maybe. At the feast. That's why they call it Saturday. What comes from Saturday? Sunday. It must have been the day to make sense. Because there are the same. When is what time? What?
Indian beliefs.
Indian people, they live in North America.
It was separated, the earth, and they put salt water between the land.
And I don't know if you know anything about what they call witchcraft.